All right, we're back. This is the line. Talk 99.5. Brian Dawson, CEO of 1819 News, filling in for Andrew McLean. And, how do you do it, Brian? How do you talk for 4 hours a day on the radio when that's not your job? How do you go in? How do you come up with that much content? How do you do it? And as I always say, it's caffeine, it's nicotine, it's creatine, it's peptides, and it's testosterone. You got to have all those things. If you're missing any of it, I mean, you could just crash out and pass out at the mic and silence alarms going off. It's all bad. So get all hopped up on the goodness and come in here and perform miracles. Anyway, on a more serious note, I do want to say, kind of going off of that call with John Wall, at the opportunity that we have right now in the state of Alabama to make real generational change. That's something that you hear all the time. It sounds like political sloganeering and it's just rhetoric or whatever. But what God has done, from the United States senator that was, just won the primary. Again, this is assuming this is a Republican supermajority state. Anything could happen. This is not an endorsement of anyone. This is just saying the way things that usually go in the state of Alabama, and as a Republican supermajority state, the people that win the Republican primary, you know, 99 times out of 100, making that number up, but more often than not, they win. They win in the general election in November. And so, assuming that that is the case here, United States Senator Barry Moore, Governor Tommy Tuberville, Lieutenant Governor John Wall, Attorney General Catherine Robertson, Secretary of State Caroline Dobson, and Auditor Andrew Sorrell, as well as we won two Public Service Commission seats. Never thought I'd see Patriots with a majority on the Public Service Commission. And then, of course, that got screwed up. I'll get into that in a minute. But and then I think we've got 5 or 6 of the 7 seats of the State Board of Education that was taken over by Patriots. John Wall, who I just had on, had actually a lot to do with changing the dynamics of the State Board of Education and who can and can't donate. The Communist Teachers Union can no longer donate money to State Board of Education candidates, and lo and behold, Patriots won. Oh my gosh! If you can keep communists from funneling money into education systems, Patriots can win. How about that? And then, as I mentioned earlier, U.S. Attorney of the Northern District is a patriot, and that man is Phil Williams. And so, this is a very big deal. I can't say enough what this means. There are none of these people whose names I just listed. You're talking about the big statewides. One of the biggest federal appointments that can be made is the U.S. Attorney of the Northern District of Alabama. The Northern District takes up like 60% of the federal. So you have the Northern District, the Middle District, and the Southern District. But I believe it's like 60+ percent of the state stuff happens. You got Tuscaloosa, Huntsville, and Birmingham all in that Northern District, and so there's a lot going on. And so the U.S. Attorney of the Northern District is a very important position. You've got an absolute patriot in there, and so really, really cool, really, really incredible um, opportunity that we have again to make real generational change. And there's, yes, we live in Alabama, but the problem has always been that everyone just assumes that everything is okay in Alabama because they look at Fox News and they're like, "Oh, Republicans are good, and we got all Republicans. We're good." Well, yeah, like I talked about yesterday, just because you have an R by your name doesn't mean that you're good. That's why I use words like right wing, nationalist, patriot. This is to get outside of the "I'm conservative, I'm a Christian, I'm a Republican." It's like, yeah, everybody says that because you have to say that to get elected, and that's how you know that this is the most conservative state in the nation. You look at the political ads, everybody's got like the shotgun over the shoulder, right? With the church steeple in the background, and they got the John Deere tractor. And he's like, "Hey, my name's Bill. I love Jesus, babies, and the Constitution." Like, dang, Bill loves Jesus, babies, and the Constitution. And so you vote for Bill, and Bill gets to Montgomery. Turns out Bill does not love Jesus, babies, or the Constitution, right? And of course, you wouldn't know that if it wasn't for 1819 News, but I digress. And that's how you have to pretend to be conservative to win in this state because the people are conservative and they don't want to vote for anybody who's not. But what we have now is people in these major seats who actually are, of which I would call a patriot, a right winger, a nationalist, whatever you want to call it. They are correctly oriented with their view of God and how that comes into their role of governing the state. Okay? It means something to these people when they put their hand on a Bible, when they get sworn in. It means something to these people. Conservative principles. It's not just talking points. It's in their bones. It's in their blood. Okay, these all the people that I just listed, That is what is so different about this, and it's going to be led by Tommy Tuberville, who's shown that he has zero reservations going to war against our civilizational enemies. And as I said yesterday on the show, what do I mean by civilizational enemies? I mean communists, Muslims. So you have communist subversion, Islamic conquering, and the militarized LGBTQI plus niner movement. Okay, as I said yesterday, if a gay person wants to vote Republican, good on them because they think that Republican, is the most sane form of government, good on them. But when they bind together with trannies and everything else to create this movement to destroy our way of life, that is a civilizational enemy. Okay, and so communist subversion, Islamification, which is conquering, and then just this whatever this LGBTQIA thing is. These are civilizational enemies, and Coach Tuberville has identified them as that, and he's gone to war against communist and communism, and we've seen Trump call out the communists very recently and said, he's like, I've been waiting for this day to go to war with communism my whole life. He understands that these are civilizational enemies. If these people win, our nation will be unrecognizable. Okay. And the reason that our nation is unrecognizable right now to what it was 30 or 40 years ago is because these people have been winning. Because they have been winning. Islam, go to Dearborn, go to the Twin Cities in Minnesota, go to England, go to Europe and see what they've done there. They want to do that here. They're civilizational enemies. Okay. And then you go to the LGBTQIA plus, the people that are doing the gay pride parades where they got the guy in assless chaps with some guy playing the butt cheeks in the back of a pickup truck in the parade, and there's kids sitting there watching the guy in the assless chaps with the gay guy playing the drums on his butt cheek in front of your children. Not that your children should ever be at one of those pride parades, but the point are, there are children watching these spectacles and these people dressed in like demonic trans things that want to read books to kids in the libraries and like all of this stuff. It's demonic, it's wicked, and if these people had their way, our civilization would be unrecognizable. Okay, and pedophilia would be, there's there's a joke on South Park when they talk about NAMBLA. NAMBLA is the North American Man Boy Love Association. Well, it's not a joke; it's a real organization. There's really a lobbying group called the North American Man Boy Love Association, which is a bunch of freaking perverts that are lobbying to promote pederasty. That's a real thing, okay? So again, there's no brakes on this train when you get into the sexual degeneracy side of things. And these are the three civilizational enemies, and Coach Tuberville has identified them for what they are. Communists. He's fought tooth and nail against the Islamification of our country and our state. And then he has gone to war with the transgender people wanting to be in bathrooms and wanting to be in locker rooms and wanting to be in women's sports and all of this crazy nonsense. And he has fearlessly gone after the most deranged, demented, violent civilizational enemies we've had, and I guarantee you it has not made his life any easier. I guarantee you it has made his life harder, but he does not care, and he continues to bring the fight every freaking day because he believes in what he is saying. He's not saying it for political expediency. He's saying it because it's the truth, and that truth pumps through his veins, and it's in his bones, and it's in his DNA. That's why he is constituted to dig his heels in and go to war with these constitutional enemies. And so God bless him for the fight. And we gave him the highest honor we give at 1819 News is the Albert Patterson Courage Award. Maybe on the other side of this upcoming break, I can go into that whole story of who Albert Patterson was. But Albert Patterson is the most courageous person in the political realm in the history of the state of Alabama, arguably a man who ran for attorney general to fight against corruption, was gunned down for his stance against corruption, killed by the corrupt people he sought to stop. And through him dying, the governor at that time, this is back in the 1950s, Phoenix City was an absolute cesspool of vice, corruption, gambling, prostitution, you name it, okay, you name it. And the people of Phoenix City were prevented from flourishing. And so one man, Albert Patterson, steps up and says, I'm going to run for attorney general. And he does, and he ends up winning the nomination. And before he's able to, win the general election or get sworn in, he tells this church group that he's speaking to and says, I'm not going to make it to swearing in. I'm not going to make it to swearing in. And he was right. He was prophetic. A few nights later, he was walking out of his law office in Phoenix City, and a sheriff's deputy walked up and put a gun in his mouth and fired 3 rounds and killed him. Okay? And he died. Well, the governor ends up instituting martial law because of that and goes in and finally cleans up Phoenix City. and the people of Phoenix City were finally free. And then his son becomes the attorney general in his place and went on to be our 44th governor, John Patterson. And so, as one of my mentors said, who told me that story, may we be that father and raise that son. And so, our highest honor at 1819 News is giving the Albert Patterson Courage Award to someone who basically someone who does what's right, no matter the cost to their life, personal reputation. There's a slogan for it, and it's going to come to me in a second. But um, people who are willing to lay down their life and their reputation and their livelihoods. That's what it is: their life, livelihood, and personal reputation to do what's right and necessary. There it is. I knew it would come to me. Those are the people that we give the award to. And the very first winner of the Albert Patterson Courage Award from 1819 News was United States Senator Tommy Tuberville. He received that very first award because of the way that he fights. And honestly, we could probably give him another award this year. He's actually going to be our keynote speaker this year at this year's gala, the Albert Patterson Gala, where we've had Tucker Carlson and Eric Metaxas and things like that. So Tommy Tuberville is going to be our keynote there. We sent out an email yesterday announcing that to the masses. It'll be up on our website and everything soon. You guys can buy tickets, you can buy tables, sponsor the event, etc. But he earned that award because he's shown tremendous courage, whether it's standing up to the Biden Department of Defense and their willingness to pay women in the military who live in a state where abortions are restricted like they are right here in Alabama. The Department of Defense under Biden said, we will pay these military women for their travel and their time off so that they could go have the baby in their womb murdered. And Tuberville said no, and he went to war, and he went to war for 11 months, and he was lambasted and blasted in the media. And he was unwavering and unflinching, and he stood up to 11 months of being on the front page news. Basically he said, you're a fascist, you're blah, 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 all the things. And he was unwavering and unmoving, and so we gave him the award. Well, then the fight that he's now brought to the Muslims and the trans and all this other stuff, these civilizational enemies, you give him another award. And so this is the guy that's going to be coming back and very likely going to be our next governor. That means something, guys. We should be excited, and we should be tuning in to see what his vision for the state is. And so I'm going to hit a commercial break. We're going to come back and probably keep talking a little bit about this or whatever else comes to mind or hits my Twitter feed because that's how I know what's trending. So Talk 99.5. We'll be back. All right, we're back. Talk 99.5. This is The Line. I'm Brian Dawson, filling in for the Andrew McLean. Feeling some big shoes, but doing the best I can with what I got. And that's not a lot. Okay, I'm not going to rap because that's not my gift or my skill set, really. But getting back to what we were talking about Coach Tuberville and the stands that he's been making against our civilizational enemies, and the fact that he's going to come back and bring that same energy to make generational change in the state, surrounded by people like John Wall, Catherine Robertson, Caroline Dobson, and Andrew Sorrell. Um, I mean, that's going to be awesome. But speaking specifically, I want to shift to a trending story, trending now. The story about Caitlin Clark, the basketball player. There's some things that I really don't care about, and then there's the WNBA. Okay, I could not care less about. Matter of fact, I don't even care about basketball. Since Kobe died, like I have no. And when he retired, that was it. Like when Kobe retired from basketball, that was it for me. Okay, I grew up in the era of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and they're the two best basketball players ever to live. I will fight you over that. Okay, it's not even close. People try and bring LeBron into the conversation. It's not happening. Okay, it's not. So anyway, so there was a time when I loved me some basketball. I'm a Colorado native, so I was a big Denver Nuggets fan. We had a good run there, and of course Kobe knocked us out of that run. And but I still appreciate him. You know, just like as a Broncos fan, I still appreciate Tom Brady despite the adversity that he has caused my team. But all of that to be said, sports, I understand the enthusiasm. I understand the fandom. I understand the love of the game and watching sports. But then there's the WNBA. I really don't understand it. I think the coolest thing that's happened is when that green dildo got thrown out on the floor. I don't know if you guys remember that big story. That was like the biggest breaking story that's ever happened in the WNBA, is that people were throwing dildos out on the court, which I thought was pretty freaking hysterical. But other than that, not a lot of excitement until a white girl got in there and started balling on everyone and is somewhat semi attractive. I certainly wouldn't say she's attractive, but she's approaching attractive levels more so than a lot of the women in the NBA. There's just something about what intense athleticism does to the frame of a woman. It doesn't matter whether they're Chinese, black, white, whatever. Intense athleticism and women getting into, I guess, what you would call like combat style athleticism, it begins to change their physiognomy and they start to bring on male characteristics. That's why a lot of them are lesbians, and the ones that aren't lesbians are very promiscuous because they take on like a male sexuality. This is my theory. You watch a lot of softball players and they turn into lesbians. You're like, what's the deal here? Anyway, that's why I believe they're taking on a martial spirit. A martial spirit is that of which is a warrior, right? They're taking on a warrior spirit. They're getting into highly competitive state, and they're competing at a high level like a man would, and therefore they're taking on the sexual drive of a nature and the martial spirit of a man. Okay, and then they become extremely promiscuous, and then they turn into lesbians. And that's, I'm describing the WNBA. Anyway, so Caitlin Clark, she comes on the scene. You know, for a WNBA player, she's sort of attractive. I don't really think so, but there's something about her that people like. She's really talented. She's very good. But she's white, and a lot of the people in the WNBA are not, and they don't like that all of a sudden there's all this attention, because there's been no attention in the WNBA, by the way. And all of a sudden this white girl shows up and she's balling, and then there's a little bit of attention. And they're like, oh no, no attention can go to this white girl. And so she gets beat up like every game by these women who are like twice her size. And the big story, if you haven't seen it, is that there was like a George Floyd on the throat, like neck thing that happened with this giant black lady, girl, whatever, on Caitlin Clark's throat, like pushing in her windpipe, and you can see her eyes like enraged as she shoves her, like the heel of her hand into the throat, like into the windpipe of Caitlin Clark, and her teammates trying to like pull her off, and she just keeps shoving her, like that. If it was the other way around, if there was, because that's obviously racial animus, okay? And so if it's a black person who hates a white girl because they're white, or a white person that hates a white girl who hates a black girl because she's black, either one, I actually think the race issue doesn't matter. If you have someone who's trying to kill someone or trying to cause physical harm to someone, no matter the racial, whatever, I think that's a bad thing, and I think there needs to be severe consequences. Well, there wasn't even a foul called, And then after the outrage, the WNBA is like, you're suspended for one game and you get a $1,000 fine. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Okay. That's the consequence. And it's like, again, and I don't like to be that guy like, well, if the situation was reversed, with the Democrats did that, then this would be the outcome. It's hypocrisy. Well, of course it's hypocrisy, okay? The Democrats and communist type of people get in power and they do whatever they want. And we say, well, if we were in power, we wouldn't get to do that. Of course we don't, okay? And we wouldn't anyway. And then you've got, anyway, I could just go on so many rants. I'm going to try and stay focused. Focus, Brian, focus. So anyway, point being, there's this, basically a criminal act was combated, happened on a basketball court, and the consequences, because it was a black girl on a white girl, was a 1 game suspension and a $1,000 fine. Whereas if it was the other way around, she would be kicked out of the league and probably go to jail. We know that. Everyone knows that, and everyone understands that. And I think that's a problem. And again, I would like to take all racial everything out of all crime. I think if you murder someone, you should get killed by the state. If a black person murders a white person, the black person should be executed. If a white person kills a black person, the white person who killed the black person should be executed. If a black person kills a black person, the black person who killed him should be executed. If a white person, you see, this is called consistency. That's what I'm talking about. It's called consistency. The idea of hate crime is retarded, okay? It's stupid. Murder is a capital offense. If someone murders someone, it does not matter what their motivation or what their race was. If someone murders someone, that person should be executed. Full stop. That's it. So why are we bringing in race crimes and it's like putting your thumb on the scale and all this other stuff? If sorry, I ran into a break with my rant. I'm gonna come back, but I cannot wait for you guys to meet my next guest. He's absolutely awesome. Andrew Isker's gonna be calling in to talk about immigration. It's gonna be lit. Coming back after the break. Talk 99.5. All right, we're back. Talk 99.5. This is The Line. I'm Brian Dawson, CEO of 1819 News. Filling in for the Andrew McLean, doing my best, but I'm bringing on a great guest. Super duper duper excited to bring him on. Twitter poster extraordinaire. And when I say Twitter poster, it's Poaster, Twitter poster extraordinaire, author of several books, including Christian Nationalism and the Boniface Option. And a dear friend of mine and brother in arms, Andrew Isker. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is an honor.
Yeah, man. So, I've got a lot of things I could just pull your string and let you go on, but my favorite thing that you have done, I believe, and it's been a great service to the country, because you're a patriot and you serve the country in your own unique way, posting on Twitter. But you do this; it's almost like catechesis, where you figure out the way that we're thinking wrongly about a subject, and then you just put common sense out in these short little tweets over and over, and you have a massive following on X. And one of the things I'm like, well, this is really good stuff, and it's certainly helping me. Well, then all of a sudden, I started hearing politicians saying your tweets in their speeches, and I'm talking like United States senators, and it's like dripping this common sense out into the ethos and the ecosystem, and these young staffers that are in these congressmen and senators, and even some of these Trump appointments and these cabinets, their young staffers are reading your stuff, and they're getting this catechesis into the hearts and minds and into the ethos of what's going on in DC, and it's actually changing the way we're going about it. And the thing that you've done this on that I think has been the most impressive is the subject of immigration. And so I just want you to just kind of go through, like, if you were trying to red pill some people, because this is a massive audience. These are probably not guys that there's tens of thousands of people listening to us right now. So they're not all 1819 podcast listeners, which I'm extremely disappointed in all those that aren't. And just know that by the next time I come on here, you guys better be. But there's some people listening that have not heard some of the things that you're talking about. And so if you were to red pill people on immigration, where would you begin and what would you say?
Oh man, yeah. I think a lot of it is like we all grew up with the shibboleths, right? Of like, oh, America is a nation of immigrants, and America is the great melting pot, and the ultimate result of like that kind of those mantras and thinkings is that like essentially all 8 billion people or however many billions of people there are on planet Earth, like could be Americans if they want to, if they just fill out the right paperwork and try hard enough to get here. And it's like, well, no, America is an actual people. It's it's an actual nation in the classical sense of that term. It isn't like the entire world just gets the right paperwork and they're American. It's a distinct people, and so like I think that's the major starting point. It's kind of like I say often, like Matt Walsh had the really good movie documentary thing. What is a woman? Answering that question. What is a woman? Is just a very fundamental question, right? And and the next question that has to be answered is, well, what is it? What is an American, right?
Mm.
What is an American? Is it just anybody who happens to show up here? Like right now, we're all anticipating this very important Supreme Court case, Trump versus Barbara, on the 14th Amendment, and answering the question of does the 14th Amendment grant citizenship, to anchor babies of illegal immigrants and so forth, and um, and it's like, well, does just or even like the issue too is like there's like what like a million Chinese babies that their moms, came to the U.S. on a tourist visa when they're like 8 or 9 months pregnant, and then had them here, and then went back to China. And they're going to grow up in China and be very Chinese, and then turn 18, they can vote in American elections.
Yeah.
Probably by mail if they want to.
Wow.
And it's like, does the 14th Amendment grant that? So really kind of absurd stuff, but it goes back to this fundamental idea of like, well, if anybody wants to be an American, America's not really a nation; it's just sort of an economic zone. and that's just simply not true.
That's good. Talk about kind of the iterations of immigration in America. So you go back to the founding, and it's like the only way you were coming into this country is if you were a Western European Christian. We did not go to third world countries and ask them to come here. We had manifest destiny, and we needed to get from the East Coast to the West Coast. We needed to finish colonizing the rest of the continent. We needed to fill it in. We needed to build train tracks. We needed to do all this stuff, and so we needed humans, but they for some reason didn't go to East India and start signing up H-1Bs to get the best and brightest over here to lay train tracks. They went to Italy, they went to Spain, and other European countries. Talk about that, and then how we go from that to Hart Cellar, and what is Hart
Yeah,
Cellar?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring up the railroads and things like that. Like there were lots of Chinese workers, but most of them went back, and there was tremendous popular political will to, to send them back. I mean, you even see this. It's sort of funny in the movie Tombstone, which I'm sure all the people have seen. The Sheriff Behan's like, oh, and I'm also a member of the president of the nonpartisan anti-Chinese league. like, um, so like there was some of that. There was kind of this 19th century H-1B worker, guest worker
Yeah.
thing, but the idea was like those people would go back home. Like, yeah, we need laborers to build these things, but they would return. But as far as like actually settling the country, it was always um, of the mind that like people who are compatible with American culture and can and capable of assimilating. Right. That was the idea. Like people that have shared culture, shared beliefs, shared similar religion. Uh, that's what drove our immigration policy from the founding onward. And only in the 20th century did it really change. Late 19th century into the 20th century with influx, with industrialization, you need lots and lots of people to work in factories. So instead of just Western Europe, they expanded to Eastern and Southern Europe, and a lot of immigrants from there. Um, but then in like 1924, it was like, okay, uh, that's enough. And there was in the middle of it, there was a red terror, right? There was all of these, communists and anarchists that came from Eastern Europe, blowing things up, assassinating people, and causing lots of violence. And the American people are like, okay, that's enough immigration. We're going to have a moratorium now, and we essentially did for 40 years
Mm.
until the 65 Hart-Celler Immigration Act. And so yeah, in that intervening period, right, and you have like millions of people that needed to assimilate, that needed to begin speaking English and becoming part of the body politic of America. And assimilation is hard; it takes time. There also needs to be a tremendous amount of social pressure on new groups to you know to get with it, right? To become part of the people that's here and not remain the people that from the places they came from. And certainly after the middle of the 20th century, right, Hart Celler and afterwards, and especially all the immigration acts in the 80s and 90s, um, since right, the idea of assimilation is like, well, that's like evil and racist and bad and
Yeah.
mean. We can't expect people to assimilate, right? We need to print everything in like 50 different languages because expecting them to learn English, like, well, that's just nativist and racist and bad. And it's like, well, you can't function as a society if you don't have a singular cultural identity.
Yep.
So multiculturalism, I mean, goes hand in hand with mass migration, and it's purposeful. Like the people that rule over us that hate our country and want it to be destroyed, right? This is a means that they use is multiculturalism. So it's like a fundamental. I mean, this is why I care about the issue so much because, well, I love my country. I love America, and I don't want to see it destroyed. I don't want to see it turned into an economic zone for the entire planet to exploit. I actually want the country to be a wonderful place for my family and for all of our families, for us to work hard and build wealth um, and to leave it to our posterity. That's the same vision of the people who founded the country.
Yeah. I feel like I read that somewhere where it was written and,
Yeah, yeah, like the Constitution. Yeah,
yes, the preamble. That's good
yeah, that's
stuff.
right.
Um, well, we're going to hit a break. And then when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about legal immigration versus illegal immigration. Is there really that big a difference, specifically as it comes to the way it's shaping and really unshaping the culture of our nation? My guest, Andrew Isker, will be coming back to talk to him. And when we get on the other side, I want him. Well, Andrew, where can people find you on the socials?
Oh yeah, they can find me at Boniface Option on X.com and also on Substack with the same spelling BONIFACE option .substack.com.
Perfect. If you can't spell Boniface, if you just put in Andrew Isker in Twitter, you'll find him too. So there's that, and we're going to hit this break, and we'll come back. All right, Talk 99.5, The Line. We'll be back. All right, we're back. This is The Line, Talk 99.5. I'm Brian Dawson, CEO of 1819 News, filling in for the Andrew McLean. And on the line is another Andrew. And actually, later today, I have another Andrew. So lots of Andrews on Andrew's fill-in show today. My friend Andrew Isker, which is at Boniface Option on the socials. You can find him on X, posting away, saving the country, one Twitter post at a time. And in the last segment, we talked about kind of the basics of having the conversation about immigration. I don't think we quite dug into what did we talk about the differences of Hart-Celler versus Pre? Did we get to that point?
I mean, just a little bit.
Yeah,
We covered it. Yeah, we just dipped our toe in that water.
dipped our toe. Well, before we dive into legal versus illegal H-1B, is there anything else on Hart-Celler that would be worth noting?
But yeah, I think before that, before Hart-Celler, to that point, like there were very strict quotas from this country, that country, and so forth. But beyond those quotas, like it was very hard to immigrate into the United States. I mean, it was almost like trying to immigrate to Japan today, right? Like that's just not possible. Right? You're not going to be able to do it. And Hart-Celler, opened the floodgates. It got rid of the quotas and allowed the administration, allowed the permanent government, all the various bureaucracies, and then the entire constellation of non-governmental organizations sprang up from that to facilitate mass migration from third world countries. Man. And then as things continue to progress, you have the various refugee acts. I mean, one of the recent Supreme Court decisions was over temporary protected status, right, TPS, and which is why, Springfield, Ohio, for instance, has
people eating the dogs and
thousands
cats
of Haitians in it, right? And the famous eating the dogs, eating the cats thing, and they were brought there under temporary protected status, really over like the last 3 decades. And NGOs are facilitating it. They're buying flights for them. They're filling out the paperwork for them, helping them to answer all the questions for customs and immigration. And then they come, and again, of course, like it's temporary. Like that, it's like in the name. They are here temporarily to seek refuge from an earthquake or something in Haiti, and then they just stay forever. Yeah. And the Trump administration said, all right, since it's temporary, it's over, and you can go back now. And of course, all of the judges say, no, we're not going to let you do that. And so the Supreme Court said, no, the president does have the authority to revoke TPS and facilitate their deportation. And so, and it's interesting. I just saw like a post earlier this morning from Joshua Lysick, who does stuff with Jack Posobiec, and writes books and stuff with him. And he wrote a book on Springfield, Ohio, and it's like monitoring like the local Facebook page, because the local media there is saying like, oh, everyone's very sad about this. It's destroying the town, and it has screenshot after screenshot of like the local Facebook page of people just celebrating, that it's over, that they don't have to deal with this anymore. But that's happened all over the country. I mean, you reported on it, I believe, in Alabama that TPS settlement has happened. I mean, that's a program in my home state of Minnesota that was used along with other programs to settle nearly 100,000 Somalis in the state of Minnesota. And all those things sprung up in the 80s and 90s. But Hart-Celler is like the foundational thing that allowed that to happen. And so, the mass migration that has taken place in the United States during this time is something that like there really is no precedent for anywhere in human history. Like even like ancient Rome with the Gothic invasions, it pales in comparison to that. Like it actually like boggles the mind to see this. But Alongside that, those changes that occurred in Hart-Celler was an expansion of the visa program, and so now we have like over 100 different kinds of visas, student visas, various work visas, um, and that's the means to facilitate legal immigration, right? So you'll have like towns like Frisco, Texas, for instance, completely overrun by people from the country of India, and the entire town is Indian. Um, Erecting big monkey statues and to their Hindu gods and things like this, and that is what has allowed it. And this is all, of course, legal immigration. It's not illegals that are crossing the southern border into the United States, and it's people that have all the right paperwork that like no Americans like actually even like voted for, right? This was never an issue
Hmm.
that Americans said yes, we would very much like this. It it all is downstream from Hart Cellar, and the greater issue with that is um, we have like massive unemployment, especially for young people, and the median wage has essentially remained flat, adjusted for inflation, for like 30 or 40 years. And so, what legal immigration has done is allowed the supply of labor to grow and grow and grow. Meanwhile, productivity grows, and the stock market grows, and the wealth grows, but the average person doesn't. It's not reflected in their wages, because the supply of labor goes up. Um, and so, corporations make a lot of money. People that own businesses and have to pay employees, really like it because they don't have to pay as much. But the rest of the country, ends up getting the short end of the stick from this, and we import people that do not have very much in common culturally with us. And you might think, well, whatever, that's who cares? People are people. But like you look at New York City and the things, the elections that have happened there. Like New York City is politically the way it is, just extremely far left and socialist, and to the point where they're calling for rent control and taxing billionaires, which always means just taxing anyone with anything. Um, and this happened because of legal immigration, right? New York turned into what it is today. California has turned into what it is today. All of these states that are going very, very far left, it's downstream of legal immigration.
Yep. Yeah, and that's something that I think people really need to get through their heads. And I assume the Somalians in your former hometown are all there legally, correct?
Yeah, yeah. There's very few. Like even when when ICE came through there last year, they picked up a few. I mean, obviously, there's going to be people committing fraud and things like that to get in, but the overwhelming majority of them there have either TPS or refugee status or various other kinds of legal means to enter the country. And so, and the thing is, like I think people have kind of this misconception about um, um, you know people that have come, refugees and legal immigrants from Muslim countries, that like, oh well, like they're very religious, right? So they should be natural conservatives, but actually, like the, what takes precedence is uh, the ability to loot everyone else, right? That's what drives them,
Hmm.
and left wing politics is a means to expropriate other people, and so it's not. There is no like conservatism to them. People think like, oh well, they're Islamic, so they should be like opposed to homosexuality and abortion and things like that. And it's like, no, like they're here to rob you legally and through the ballot box. And that's what's happening in New York City, and it'll happen everywhere else in the country unless we put an end to mass third world migration to the United States.
Amen. Well, that's good stuff. Andrew Isker, you can get him at Boniface Option or just search Andrew Isker, Isker, on X. You can find his stuff. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and give us that education.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Awesome. Take care, brother.